like, would you please do this? He's automatically a wuss.
And there's like layers and layers and layers to that. I've always been impressed, having worked in a variety of places, including some fairly high pressure ones. The folks who, if you've got a client here and you got to look good and you need to show that you're earning the client's money, there are people who respond to that by just being bitchy, right? Even if they're guys, just make everyone around miserable, but they're putting on a show for the client. Whether you're actually getting output is a whole other question. And I can think of several workplaces where acting like this and mistreating your employees actually brought down output. Because people start losing, they're like, whatever, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what I do, it doesn't get hollered at anyway, right? I mean, right now I can think of examples, but I won't share because you guys know these people. Using town examples. And that plays in, right? So in all of these things, I'm trying to make sure that we're comparing women in the same jobs for the same amount of time with the same management style to men just like them. The final point, which was brought up, I was of course teasing women aren't lazy, he didn't say they were lazy, was the primacy of the job. If you think about couples one likely makes more than the other, because that's life. The one who makes more than the other likely dictates a lot of the family's social and economic life. If I make more and I get a better job offer over here, we're moving for that, right? And everybody understands that that's the way the game is played. And if I make more and the kids get sick, am I going to be the one that stays home? No. If I make more and someone needs to be home at 4:30 so that when the kids get off the bus, am I going to be the one that cuts out of work early, that takes less time at home? No, it's got to be my partner, right? And if my partner makes more, that's all going to be me. Go ahead.
I don't know why I just thought about this, and I'll be on the subject at all. I feel like women have more credentials to satisfy in the workplace.
What do you mean credentials?
Based off of, 95% of the time, let's be honest, managers are hiring people are men in most situations. Is that correct? Is that accurate?
No, because most managers want for upfront, like customer service, they want happy.
Do you mean that the hiring managers
I'm
are
saying
men?
like the person who's going to hire you, the person you have the interview with is most likely going to be a man.
Yeah, I don't think so.
I was a woman, every job I've ever had.
But I'm not picking on you.
Okay,
I think that's actually one of the things we need to talk about.
Okay,
Go ahead.
okay, let's just say that this was an accurate statement and there were men that were managers at
Sure.
places, businessmen that were hiring. Okay, if a guy comes in to do the job,
Mhm.
how many times is he going to look at them and say, well, that guy doesn't really look good, I don't think I'm going to hire him. If the girl is attractive, he is going to be more apt to hire him. No doubt.
Everybody benefits from the pretty difference. And not just because I get to look at prettier women. In fact, even though most American men are too damn homophobic to say, why, he's a fine-looking man, the fact of the matter is, pretty men have it much easier. Taller men have it much easier. Men who are confident have it much easier. And that's just the way it is with life. So with women, and women I think have kind of an interesting role to play here. Yes, life is easier for pretty women, but depending upon the kind of job you're looking at, that prettiness has to be tempered. So if you walk in looking bimbo in the wrong environment, there is no way, right? And that absolutely matters. But that's been documented. It's been documented across sexes. It helps to be pretty. It helps men to be pretty, and it helps women to be pretty. Maybe not pretty, but you know what I'm saying. No, it's kind of true. Now, the primary job, the reason it plays into the I'm going to work harder is you're absolutely right. If you're the primary job, these people do work harder. And if it's a man, then, and I got, responsibilities back home, it's my primary job, I'm going to work harder. If it's a woman, and I got responsibilities back home, It's my primary job, and I'm going to work harder. There's a tremendous difference between the primary job in a family and the secondary job in a family. Okay, go ahead.
Well, one of the things I wasn't saying that men are the only ones that work harder because it works out that way because men can't get pregnant, you know? I mean,
Oh yeah, absolutely.
and that's one of the biggest things.
And that's why we have to put it in. Because what we're trying to do is we're trying to do an apples-to-apples comparison. Women in the same jobs, with the same amount of time, the same sort of effective or not negotiation and management style, and attachment to succeeding in their job. And we want to compare them to men just like them. Because anything else isn't fair, right? Because if we've got a woman who's good at all these, but she's actually secondary to her husband, I don't know why, maybe he's a hedge fund manager or something, then we can't, it's not a direct comparison to the guy for whom this really is the first and maybe only income in the family. Because you would expect he would work harder. You're 100% correct. So what we're trying to do here, and if this was a stats class, I'd be building a regression model, and putting these variables in allows us actually to take their movement out of the equation. So that we're comparing apples to apples. What do you think the number is if we do this second wage gap?
More like what I said originally, 47%.
Nope, other way. Good. I'm not sure about your 47%. I'll have to look that up. By the time you do an apples-to-apples comparison, you end up much, much closer to 92 cents on the dollar. All right? What we have done is we've turned this into we took this total wage gap and took all of the gender out. So we're left with a sex wage gap. Does that make sense? What's the difference between sex and gender? Sex is what your body is, what's in your genes, however you spell it. Gender is all the social stuff that goes along with that. So this is the penalty for being a woman in this environment. 8 cents. 8 cents is way less bad than 22 cents. Now, is there room for politics in this? Absolutely. Someone who's pushing a feminist agenda is going to point at this. Someone who's pushing a non-feminist agenda is going to point at this. And in fact, there's another number that they're going to bring up, which is even further. But you need to know the difference, right? Now, if we care about families, so let's do this. As if I'm going to make a table. Let's just do this. Okay, so what we've done here is we've come up with two different numbers that give us two different understandings of what we're looking at. Depending upon how you interpret these, as a feminist, if you are one, you're going to say either, if we care about young women and want to help them win the game, right? And we care about the 92 cents, we're going to go with the beat the boys. Anything a man can do, I can do better. We're going to teach them the rules of the game, and we're going to teach them to manipulate the game and win the game. This has been in the news lately because if you recall, the Facebook, one of the ladies at Facebook, women at Facebook, I wish I knew who, but I don't, so there. One of the Facebook people has put out a book and called it Lean In. And what she's advocating is don't let them say, if you're aggressive, you're being bitchy. Screw them. Lean in to your career and fight it. Attack your science and technology classes. Attack your internships, right? She wants you to attack your career like a competitor. That's a beat the boys at their own game approach. And it's great. And it even appears to be working. But look who's left out. we haven't, if you care about families at all, if you recognize that women's problems are likely because of the cultural roles we've talked about here, then you just let them go. Well, you have kids, what do you expect? I've got one of my, probably the smartest student I ever taught, or the one that seemed the smartest, near as I could tell. Like this girl, she was bored, right? Because she read everything and she understood it. Okay, there's nothing for me to explain. Try and have a class discussion, and usually we're gonna go here and here and here, and then I got an endpoint in mind. You know, point A, she'd see the whole chain, and I'm like, oh, all right. Woman she had at least 15 IQ points on me. And I could completely see it, despite being 15 years older than her. Great, great kid. She's a stay-home mom now. What a waste.
I have a daughter that's got had a 4.0 grade point average that decided after 2 years she wanted to go get married and follow her husband that's joined the Navy.
I like
She
that.
went all the way through high school with a 4.0 grade point average.
Yeah. So,
Do anything she wanted to, just
that's what she wanted to do.
decided that, you know, she's like her mama, that's where she wanted to be.
So these people would say, what I just said was true. They'd say, the woman you're talking about is wasting her talents, right? Because she's over here, she made those choices, whatever, right? If you want to try and help women by focusing on the gender side, you end up with a couple of different things. One is, you're going to see less or fewer CEO. This focus isn't necessarily going to turn out women who are heads of the CEO. There's heads of corporations, CEOs of companies. There we go. Because you're not focused on that. You're focused on regular women. This is going to turn out CEOs, and it's going to look great, right? We got more Fortune 500 women than ever. Secondly, I ask you this. Do you think in today's environment, a father who says, you know what, if the kids are sick, I want to stay home today?
Actually, that happens a lot more than it used to.
Absolutely.
In my line of work, being a supervisor, you know, we have guys that stay home constantly with the kids to the point that sometimes you gotta say, hey, don't you have a wife? You know? But it's whoever has to leave.
Mhm.
If he's got leave built up that he can take, and she doesn't, then he stays home.
Right. And you bump into it. Like you've got a frustration with this. Everyone who has to deal with people who have kids has frustration with other people's kids, right? So it's awesome if they're not hurt doing what you're doing. But if it's going to come down to, no, I can't make that travel to St. Louis this weekend, and I got to be out of here at 4, the old-fashioned feminist line used to be that a man who did that stuff showed he was a great father. I'm not sure that's true anymore. I'm sure he's a better father than if he didn't do that stuff. That part I don't necessarily disagree with. But I'm not sure everyone goes, oh, isn't that awesome? We've got an involved father on our team. You know why? Because there are other people that aren't going to take time for those commitments. Like, I think if anything, part of what makes me nervous about this approach is we've actually built a world that's more full of corporate sharks than ever. See what I'm saying? So focusing on moms, as in the gender side, is actually a focus on families, right? And it's also one of the reasons that several weeks ago I brought up the Icelandic example. Not because, it intrigues me that their focus on gender and helping families, because that's part of what they want to do, actually ends up benefiting both sexes, right? Which is just, it's interesting to me. I get a kick out of that. So what we've done, we took the total wage gap, reduced it to a sex wage gap, because, the dads who help and the moms who help, they're both in the same category now, right? Because this equation forced them into that category. The women who are sharks and the men who are sharks, they're in the same category now, being compared to each other. This is what we end up with. If we drive this narrow enough, the narrowest that I've seen this done in terms of an apples-to-apples comparison is young, urban, professional, highly educated, okay? And we'll call it yuppie, but it's different than yuppie used to be. Young, urban, professional, highly educated. And it's not 47. Go ahead.
In any of those models, I'm guessing it would be under highly educated, where they went to school. Does that play into correlation? Because we talked about same age coming out of school at the same time. They may not have necessarily received their degree at the same location, and even if they did, where did they get their undergraduate degree and what were their GPAs?
Yeah, we would want to include for that if we could. Or at least maybe in type of school, because you want to get that ranking. That ranking matters in life, then you want to build it into your model. And there are different ways to measure it. Here's what's awesome about this. Are you ready? Are you ready? It's not what you think it is.
It's the same.
It's $1.10. If we go to Atlanta, Manhattan, San Francisco, San Diego, and we take highly professional, highly educated, 20-something, and I think this is important because there's a generation effect which is built into this, 20-something young men and women, the women are actually kicking the boys' butts. Now, here's the thing that I think is interesting about this. I see this in class, okay? More women go to college than men. Now, maybe sociology is an especially feminine discipline, but there's more women in my classes than men. Often, the women do better in their schoolwork, present themselves better in class, show more confidence. Our guys are okay here today, but I'll tell you, when I go to class, more often than not, if you listen to sort of the old line feminist, there's a whole thing about how men dominate the classrooms, which is your point on the middle schools that you brought up before class came out. I have a hard time believing that. In my classrooms, the men never dominate. In fact, the men have learned to be pretty soft-spoken. When I think of who's interrupting, who's cutting in, who's cutting other people off, it's not men. It's not all the women, it's a couple of women. But it's if this was the 1950s and it was a high school, it would be the super smart guy and the football player, whatever the high status men are, the super confident men are. But in today's world, it's the more confident women who are stepping in and they're not afraid to take over the classroom and talk, which is awesome. I mean, I'm just happy to have people to talk. But it plays into this, and I think this is kind of interesting. Now, there are gender outcomes, and next time maybe let's talk about generations, because like I said, I think there's a generation component to this which matters a lot. A lot of my take on this is driven by a certain amount of frustration. The 1950s and Betty Friedan, whatever those guys were doing, I don't think fully captures what's going on nowadays. There have been so many changes in gender and so many changes in the economy that I think that today's world certainly isn't equal, but nothing's equal. I think that today's world takes a different look on it, okay? So when I think of these young women, I think, who are they dating? Right? And it ends up being kind of interesting. When I think of these people in my life, and I think about the young men and women that I know well enough to know, I end up with a broad variety of people. You know, I can think of one who's a contractor for a contractor for NASA, of all people, rolling in Beamers. I've never heard even a remote suggestion of her love life, such as it exists or not. I can think of another young woman that was actually stationed in the Bush White House and doing work in Iraq. I think she may have fallen on hard times since Obama's been elected. But again, never heard anything about her love life. I can think of a woman who is the kind of management consultant that flies in and helps you straighten out your company by redefining your goals, building efficiencies, and firing all of the losers. She's pretty hardcore. She has a husband. He's got a much more 9-to-5 job, so he's the one that handles all the kid stuff. She could be gone at a moment's notice. I can think of another one, went to law school. Her husband dealt with the kids until they were bigger, and then he became a realtor, which carries all of that flex time. Another one who came from a fairly well-to-do family, also became a lawyer, is carrying the financial burden of the family. And her husband is an electrician, and he started a company, mostly, I think, to save face with his fairly well-to-do in-laws. This is my company. Dude, it's a pickup truck with a magnet. Mike's Electrics. Now, in all of these situations, the women are these $10 kind of women. And the men that they have to date end up being kind of hard to come up with. But in fact, masculinity has changed too, right? So the SG up here, Seth Green, that's Seth Green? Is that the chubby kid with the Irish fro? And not Doug? Who?
Seth Rogen.
Okay.
Seth Green is
Let's go with Seth Rogen. You ever notice he keeps like doing the same movie over and over and over again? I'm 25 and I'm not really grown up yet. I'm 30 and I'm not really grown up yet. I'm 35, I'm not really grown up yet. At some point this guy's, I don't know, maybe he can ride this till he dies. And if you look at the story, he's in a home, he's got some roommate with people, and Knocked Up, I'm thinking, he's smoking pot, he's watching porn, he ends up impregnating Lisa Kudrow, I think it was. See, I'm bad at this. Bad blonde. And, but the fact that these movies are popular may tell us that something's going on. Like, it may be tapping into people's frustrations. I can tell you the moms who really want to be grandmoms of some of the women I talked about are a little frustrated, right? Oh, where are they going to get married to? But if the women are making this, and women traditionally date and marry up, what happens when the women are the $10 girls? They're going to have to marry, half-employed electricians, who are great guys, but it really breaks the old pattern. So that Seth Rogen can be kind of cute and charming, doesn't have to be a good provider, which is good because his characters never are going to be. There is a whole spate of literature that's been coming out the last 5 years that's focusing on men dropping the ball as young men. Even the title, the one that leaps to mind, is called Manning Up. And it's like, dudes, you gotta get off the Sony, the PlayStation, and move out of your mom's house and do something with your life, right? So part of what I think is interesting here is underneath all of this stuff, there are a variety of other gender changes going on. We're almost out of time. This wasn't like, I don't let you guys fight. We can do more of this because there's a little bit more to this discussion, but what kind of questions do you have so far about this? Does this seem like I'm way off, or does this seem like it rings maybe a little bit true?
I feel like the cultural is more influential than action.
Say it again?
Like the social and cultural aspects definitely play in more than the actual person that's men versus women is straight up.
Oh, yes. And as a sociologist, what we're interested in is the social cultural angle. All right, go ahead.
A lot of us see it, it used to be the man with the dominant and was passive. I see you need one of these side of those for it to be successful. It doesn't have to be, you know?
Right.
You just need that balance.
And that is a completely new perspective. Because in the past,
I mean, myself prefer to be the dominant one, but I don't see an issue. I just know there has to be one dominant and one passive. It's how it's always been. Yin yang. You have that dominant side and that passive side. It doesn't matter who it is.
What happens if they're both dominant though?
Male.
You spent 20 years fighting, trust me, I'm married now.
yeah, we'll do that after class. All right, thanks everybody. Have a good Wednesday.